This is not psychotherapy. Dr. Wills does not have a provider-patient relationship with this guest. These are just two people talking about emotions.
Welcome to Give a Actually, with your host, Dr. Alex Wills. Welcome to Give a Fuck Actually with myself, Dr. Alex Wills, and today I'm joined by Kerry Davis. Thanks for joining us, Kerry.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
Awesome. So a little bit about Kerry. First, I was introduced to Kerry from my personal trainer, Nick. Is that right, Kerry?
Yeah, that is.
And he told me to try to do a lot of Kung Fu Panda references.
That's awesome. Line them with awesomeness.
I've been working with Nick at Cavell Gym here in Boise for the last 6 months or so, and it's just been really great to get coached by him and working on that kind of stuff for sure.
Yeah, he is a great coach. I'm a master's athlete in Olympic weightlifting, and he was a coach at the gym and the club that I belonged to for a very long time, and I really, really appreciate him.
So if you have any Kung Fu Panda references, feel free to bring him on. He's excited about that.
Right.
But a little bit about Kerry Davis. She's a lifelong athlete, mental performance coach, a yoga teacher. She was a Division I college gymnast, a martial artist, and is current master's athlete in sports of weightlifting. Kerry loves helping athletes perform at their best and feel good doing it. She believes in the power of mindfulness, self-compassion, and gratitude in managing the pressure and stress of being an athlete. My 10-year-old, well, now 11-year-old daughter, she was my first guest ever, and she's a gymnast. She did really well in state last year, and so I'm learning, vicariously through her with all the things she's going through. Kerry's earned a Master of Science in Kinesiology with an emphasis in exercise sports psychology and is a 200-hour registered yoga teacher. She is working towards a second graduate degree in clinical mental health counseling and is pursuing the Certified Mental Performance Consultant credential through the Association for Applied Sport Psychology. Does that all sound accurate?
Yeah. Kind of a
That's
mouthful.
a lot.
No. Yep, that's
Yeah.
it.
Anything you wanted to add to that, and what are you, up to now?
Yeah, gosh. Yeah, I guess, I grew up doing gymnastics. That was my very first love. I started doing that when I was 6 and, went through all the way through college and had a lot of really amazing experiences through that. And then after that, I had to do something to kind of fill the void. And so I did Taekwondo for a very long time, and that was great fun. And I did a little bit of judo and then Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So yeah, and then I've been doing Olympic weightlifting for the past several years.
Great. And are you big into social media, or if people are wanting to follow you, is there anything that they can look up?
Yeah, I am on Instagram at Coach Kerry D. Yeah, I
Nice.
haven't been posting a whole lot lately just because of school and life and stuff, but I'm gonna have a break here pretty shortly and start posting some more again.
Awesome. And Kerry is Kerry?
It is. Thank you for asking. There's like 10 ways to spell it, I think.
So many Kerry variations.
So many. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So anything else you wanted us to know about you going on lately? And as we were talking about before we started recording, this podcast is a bit of an experiment. Neither one of us knows exactly where it's going to go, but we're going to
Yeah.
be curious about emotions that are going on with you, with athletes, and sort of follow the emotions wherever they lead us to see what we can learn from them.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think as far as emotions go, some things that athletes struggle with are expectations, managing expectations and being really focused on a particular outcome. And then another really common area that athletes struggle with in terms of intense emotions is injury. Injuries happen. They can be career ending or they can be a bump in the road sort of a situation, but they're always emotional. For me, since I've been participating in Olympic weightlifting it's been kind of a series of injuries for me. Like I'll make some progress and get injured, climb my way back, build my way back and get another injury. And so I'm kind of in that cycle again. In December, I competed at the Masters World Championships in Orlando, Florida, and then started a new training cycle in January for the Masters National Championships, which were in Philadelphia in March. And in that training cycle, I did something to my shoulder. It started hurting kind of one week in training. And I was like, okay, it's just cranky. I'm just going to do the regular things I do to manage it. It's going to be fine. And the pain wasn't going away. Started doing some physical therapy, was kind of helping a little bit, but still wasn't really fixing the problem. Still competed in March. I was like, nope, I'm not going to pull out of this. I'm going to go do it. My body wasn't 100%, but I competed. And then after that competition, I was thinking, well, I need to get this checked out. This is more than just being grouchy. And I got an MRI and found out, yeah, I do have an injury that needs to be fixed. One of the rotator cuff muscles, the tendon, is fully torn. And so I've got to have that surgically repaired.
Mm.
So once I got the results from the MRI, it was kind of this like just deflation. Like I deflated,
Mm.
like got very, very, very frustrated because it's just been this constant cycle of injured, get injured, come back, get injured, come back. And it's just really, it just, kind of hammers me because I'm like, when am I ever going to get over the hump? Am I ever going to get over the hump? Am I really going to be healthy for a good stretch of time so I can really perform the way I want to and the way I feel like I can? And so, yeah, so that's kind of a recent event for me I've been managing a lot of emotion.
Yeah, just hearing that, I can, find myself feeling so frustrated, and I imagine the intensity is just overwhelming at times. Before we jump more into the emotions with that, to take a
Mhm.
step back, could you tell us a little bit about? I've always been fascinated with sports psychology, and
Mm,
I think it's a lot of our dreams to be able to work with athletes and help them to
mhm.
get to peak performance. What inspired you to get into that in the first place, and what's
Yeah.
your kind of take on it?
Part of what inspired me to kind of take this route was my own personal experience growing up doing gymnastics. I was successful, but on some levels. And also, I always struggled. I always struggled with confidence and managing fear and trying to live up to expectations that I had for myself and my coaches and expectations I thought maybe my family had for me. And so it was gymnastics was really amazing for me and also very, very hard. And so part of the reason I'm getting into sports psychology is to help other athletes manage those types of things, to maybe if I can help someone else not have as hard of experience as I did, then it's like, yes, yeah, I want to help other people with that. Just kind of, and then I'm kind of coming into it in middle age. I spent a long time working in law enforcement as a civilian and doing human resources related work and health and wellness related work in that space. And after 18 years, I decided it was time to move on. I finished my yoga teacher training and I was teaching yoga. And then I was like, well, this is great. And also, I feel like I'm not quite there yet. And so I found a health coach training program that was yoga influenced. And I went through that and that one on one coaching people with health related things. And I was like, this is great. And also, it doesn't feel like I'm quite there yet. One of my teammates at my weightlifting club started kind of suggesting to me, hey, no one really talks about like the mental space of the sport and how we develop those skills and do better that way. And then so that got my wheels turning even more. And then I started pursuing sport and performance psychology. So I guess kind of a long answer to to that question, but that's kind of how it was kind of step after step after step and trying to listen and pay attention to my intuition and what felt right and what felt good and what felt kind of congruent with yeah, with where I wanted to go. So,
Watching
um
my 11-year-old little gymnast with how much pressure she seems to put on herself. And gymnastics, to me, it seems like almost a cruel sport because you you go through so many weeks and months of training, and then you perform, and you only get
mhm,
one shot, and you make the smallest little mistake, and it's all over. And
mhm,
I see her just dealing with these ideas of expectations and fear,
mhm.
and I, as a parent, I worry, like, did I somehow do this to her? Like, where is
Yeah.
this drive coming from? Like, does she feel like she's not lovable unless she gets first place? And so it sounds like it really hard for you at times. How
Mhm.
hard did it get at its worst in your experience? And how are you able to help other athletes so that it doesn't have to be as brutal as it was for you?
Yeah. I think maybe in like junior high, high school, gosh, college, a lot of my time was really very difficult. I got very self-critical. I was very, very hard on myself, very mean to myself for not being able to get over fears or not be able to I should be had again coming back to expectations, like comparing myself to other teammates who were older and at a higher level than I was and saying, "Well, people are telling me I can do this. I should be able to be here, and why can't I do that?" And so, yeah, I got very, very self-critical, very hard on myself. And actually, I was talking about this with a teammate and a coaching client earlier today about how yoga, this kind of tangent a little bit, but how yoga, when I started practicing yoga over time, that self-criticism, that self-talk criticism really just was like this nice gradual downhill slide where I learned how not to do that anymore through yoga, through being present and noticing, paying attention to how my practice felt without judgment. And I kind of got over the self-critical part and learned and started practicing self-compassion.
Hmm, that's
So,
great.
yeah.
Yeah, it's so easy, to be critical. And you've talked a couple of times about getting over fears. What were the fears of?
They were like fears of certain skills, and I would have mental blocks. And it was really at at multiple stages of my experience in gymnastics. So when I was a certain level, I would have mental blocks over these skills. And then when I got better, I would have mental blocks over other skills. So I don't know, it's hard to kind of describe, but it was like skill based. I was
Mhm,
very fearful of going backwards, which is
mhm,
kind of, I need to do that if I'm going to flip and stuff. So, yeah, a lot of the fears were like skill based fears, where I sometimes have like a mental block and all of a sudden I couldn't do my body put the brakes on and we're like, nope, you're not going to do this skill right now. And so, and I would never have really a good reason why. So
mhm.
it was very frustrating.
What do you find most helpful for yourself and working with other athletes about fears like that?
It's kinda depends on the athlete and depends on the sport context, a lot of times it's reminding them, reminding the athlete of how far they've come, the skills that they have, what they've overcome already. Kind of remember, "Oh, you've done this thing, like, probably thousands of times, right? Oh, yeah. Yeah, I probably have." And just a lot of it is reminding them of how far they've come and what they can do. And to trust themselves,
Mm,
and also relying on the trust from their coaches, from their teammates. that they're there to support them, and that their coach isn't going to ask them to do something that they're not ready for.
Mm.
And then also techniques that are about kind of self-regulation. So managing their nervous system, maybe with some deliberate breathing, having a self-talk statement or a couple of words to help them feel more courage or more strength in that moment. Sometimes mental imagery, seeing and feeling themselves do the skill, do the movement, you know. Yeah. So self-regulation is a big key.
Yeah. With the radical emotional acceptance, I talk a lot about how these fearful or other unpleasant emotions are there for a reason. They're actually trying to help us, they're good
Yeah.
for us. I'm curious with fear when it comes to, because my daughter talks about, new skills she's not confident at. And, she could do it in practice 100 times, but when it comes to performance, it's like there's this block there. And
Yeah.
what's the purpose of fear in general for humans? Why is fear a
Oh,
good thing? And particularly for, because, we think athletic performance, but we think about back in the olden days, like battle, war, like this could be survival to have the best skills, and that's like life or death. So, how could fear actually be a good thing? Is that part of it to help yourself understand, or not so much?
yeah. I think very generally speaking, fear is protective. It gets our attention, right? It's like, ooh, we're about to do something that might put us in a compromised position, or maybe it might be unsafe. So fear is gets our attention, is like, oh, should we do this or not? So fear can be very helpful in the context of sport, like competition nerves, kind of performance anxiety type of situation. How we perceive that nervousness, that fearful, makes it can make a difference in how we perform. So if we see that nervousness as helping us to do better, maybe it gives, because we're more energized via our nervous system, maybe we have that extra boost of energy that's going to help us perform the best that we can. So,
Mm,
or if we perceive the nerves as a threat, and like, oh, scary, this is really, I don't know if I want to do this, then it's gonna, maybe cause us to perform with hesitation, or maybe not at all. So when it comes to competition nerves and performance anxiety in general, just how we perceive that, whether it can help us or be scary and hinder us, is a really impactful shift how we look at it. And just a general understanding that every athlete gets nervous. Olympic
mm,
athletes get nervous, world champions get nervous. It is a normal human thing when we're going to go out in the world and do something that's important to us, and other people are going to be watching us or whatever. It is completely common, typical to be nervous.
mm.
And it's not, that particular athlete, that particular gymnast isn't weird or different, or, it's a normal thing that happens to most athletes. Everybody gets nervous. And so reminding ourselves of that as well. It's like, oh yeah, okay. I want to do well at this. It's important to me. So yeah, I'm going to be a little nervous. It's okay. I got it.
Yeah, for my approach, I'm always looking to see how the emotion, in this case fear,
Mhm.
is there to help. And I think you put it really well, the sort of the interpretation. If you think of it as a problem, it can cause you to be hesitating and could
Yeah.
actually cause you to not perform very well.
Mhm.
Or if you think of it as, my goal is to embrace it as a friend, realize it's just there to
Mhm.
help, even find, sincere gratitude for the fear, and realize it's trying to make you aware of the threat, keep you on your toes,
Mhm.
give you that extra energy to really, be at your best.
Yeah.
And then that could push you to giving the best performance ever.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a nuancy thing, but it's
Uh-huh.
it's the difference between, victory and defeat. It's a lot. One of my best friends is a counselor, and he does sports counseling, and he talks about kind of this curve of when you have, enough anxiety,
Mhm.
you're going to get to your optimal performance. But when there's too much or too little, you don't
Yeah.
have enough of that motivation. And so trying to kind of manage it to where you're at your peak, but not overwhelmed.
Yeah, it's kind of this balance between, like, challenge approach versus threat avoidance, and so we kinda get that activation, and it's like challenge approach, and then when there's too much activation, and then we consider it a threat, and then we back off and avoid. So it's a very fine line that is also so context specific, that can change in a lot of different, situations for different athletes and
I think one piece of it is we can understand this intellectually, we can understand the whole story behind it, but to actually experience it, that's the part that kind of changes us. So, if there's
Mhm,
any way to practice to get that
mhm.
habit of, okay, I have extreme fear right now, and I'm going to pretend it's my friend, and I'm going to experience performing the best I've ever performed before, and then experiencing that enough times, that kind of rewires that emotional relationship with the emotion, I think.
Yeah, our response to it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. To kind of jump back into the injury that you brought up, and I guess you said the emotions, you just felt deflated, frustrated, the cycle. As I've been going to the gym every day, I'll have, like, this never-ending cascade, like, my shoulder will have this, like, weird pain, and it won't go away for 3 weeks, and I'm trying to figure it out, and then it's like, "Okay, finally it's gone." And then all of a sudden, my lat has this, like, weird thing going on. I'm like, "What next?" It's like this never-ending
Yes.
frustration. But you actually had an MRI, and you have,
Mhm,
like, a serious injury. So what
mhm.
other emotions? So deflated, frustrated. Can you name any other emotions that have been going on for you?
I guess angry. Yeah, anger, well, frustration and anger. Maybe some fear, like fear if I am I ever really gonna be able to, like, get where I wanna go with my performance in the sport.
Right.
Fear, maybe a little fear of if I will be able to, if my body will work the way I want it to after I, heal and go through all the rehab.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in the case that it doesn't get better, or if this pattern doesn't stop, or if you don't heal up, right? What emotions do you think would come up if there was that bad outcome?
Yeah. Yeah, like, if I got to a point where I realized, "Hey, maybe I really shouldn't be doing this sport anymore." That would be, yeah, like, lots of sadness, lots of disappointment for not really, you know, having the experience that I had envisioned for myself. Maybe some anger too. Yeah.
Mhm. And we think of anger as a shield emotion. It's easy to get in touch with anger because you're empowered and
Mm,
nobody's going to mess with you because you'll kill them. Usually, underneath the anger, behind the anger shield, there's more vulnerable emotions. You mentioned disappointment, great
yeah.
sadness. Any other vulnerable emotions behind the anger, you think?
Hmm. I guess it would be kind of, like, embarrassing. Like, here's Carrie, she just can't stop getting injured, and she doesn't get very far because she keeps getting injured, and so yeah.
It's interesting to notice that the fear, it's, like we talked about before, it's there to make us aware of a threat. And in
Mhm,
this case, the threat isn't necessarily that your injury is not going to heal or that you won't be able to compete at the same level, but it's really a fear of some pretty painful emotions and getting into a state of disappointment, sadness, anger, even embarrassment. I think, we're afraid of these emotions because they are painful, very uncomfortable, and there's also maybe a bit of an irrational fear that we're gonna remain in these emotions forever, and we're just
mm.
gonna sort of live out the rest of our days in shame or something, right?
Mhm. Yeah, I think kind of bringing yoga back into the conversation, yoga has taught me also, besides learning self-compassion and how to be less critical of myself, has taught me to kind of feel my feels and
Mm.
not be as afraid of that, and understanding that it's just part of this moment and it is going to pass, and I am going to feel joy and happiness and other things too. It's just kind of part of the continuum of our experience, because we can experience so many different emotions as humans. It's just part of the spectrum of experience.
Yeah, I like that, and it sounds like yoga is really, besides the physical movements of yoga, it's been a really great sort of mindset. And how does for you, how has yoga kind of weaved in the mentality in addition to the physical component?
Well, do you mean like working with yoga weaved in with like sports psychology, or with?
For you as a yoga, in addition to the physical practice, are there also some teachings that go along with
Oh,
it,
yeah.
some mindsets that,
Mhm.
yeah.
Okay, thanks. Now I now I smell it, you're cooking. Yeah, there's lots of philosophical concepts in yoga. And yoga is very wide and deep and old. And what we see most of, in modern yoga and popular yoga, is the movement aspect and putting our body into pretzel shapes and things like that. And it's much, like I said, much bigger, wider, deeper. And there is a lot of philosophy in there. And there's concepts about letting go, of non-attachment,
Mm,
not getting so attached to an outcome or an aspect of our life or that kind of a thing. So non-attachment has been very, very helpful. There's a concept called Santosha, which is contentment of self. It's accepting all of yourself as you are, all of your experiences, and it's takes some practice.
mm,
Because, we all have aspects or events or moments where, like, man, I wish I wouldn't have done that or whatever. But practicing compassion and acceptance for all of who you are
mm,
has been really helpful. And then another concept, I'm forgetting the Sanskrit term for it, but it's self knowledge, understanding yourself, self awareness. What are your like tendencies? What are your habits? How do I go about doing things? I have this story in my head about this thing. Is it even true? So yeah, non attachment, compassion and contentment with yourself, self knowledge have all been things that have really helped me a lot.
yeah. It's music to my ears. I really love that. So I think the emotions that you are sharing courageously with us, this, fear, you have these hopes, these aspirations for powerlifting, and of course you have, another setback, an injury, you feel deflated, frustrated, angry, and then there's fear that it might not get better, it might not go in the right direction. And all of these emotions are so valid, and, I understand they've been pretty intense for you, and you should be having them because they're reflecting back, the reality. And I'm glad that you also have that realization that, God forbid there is bad outcome and you end up disappointed and having these, very intense, sad, even emotions of embarrassment. You also have this understanding that they would be temporary, and you would still go on to have joy and happiness, and life would still go on. However, that doesn't take away from the reality, like, yeah, this is a big deal and it is, super important for you.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is a big deal for me. Um,
Yeah.
and I guess part of why that is too is I think in some ways I am using my experience in weightlifting to overcome some of the challenges that I had in gymnastics. Because there's still some, it's still hard. Some of the challenges that I had as a gymnast and that I wasn't able to overcome with my confidence and fear. And so part of one of the many reasons I'm involved in weightlifting is to kind of overcome those things that I had trouble with in the past. And yeah, if my body said no thank you to weightlifting anymore, then it'd be like, well, it would be pretty disappointing. Like, gosh darn. I was really hoping I could, you know, do better than I hoped and overcome some of those old challenges. So
Yeah, what were some of those in gymnastics that you felt you couldn't overcome?
I think I never was able to get to a point I was really where I overcame my lack of confidence. It was always a struggle. And I never was, yeah, just in a space where I was really, really strongly confident. It was just
Mhm.
always a challenge.
Yeah. Yeah. So you have this desire to experience that.
Yeah. And in weightlifting, I'm proud of what I've accomplished, but I know I can do more. But part of my reason for being involved in sport again and being an athlete again is to show myself that I can do this with confidence and I can perform well and I can to kind of, yeah.
What is it like for you right now? Kind of, we've named the different emotions going on at this moment where you're experiencing this setback, and we're not trying to fix or change anything. These are all valid emotions to be
Mhm.
having. They all make sense. The fear makes sense. There's a lot at stake. There's potential for some emotional pain too. What's it like to just kind of sit with that in the moment without thinking that we need to change or fix anything? It's just sort of informing you about, yeah, this is my life at the moment. This is my reality right here.
Yeah. I emotionally, I guess at this moment in time, it just feels kind of neutral. Like I've accepted that, yeah, I'm injured right now. I have to have surgery to fix it. I do not like that. I am not happy about it at all. And
Mhm.
also it's just the reality of the situation. So
Yeah.
so I just, I feel gratitude that I am able to get it fixed and that I have the resources to do that and to do rehab and to get healthy again. Yeah, but just kind of neutral, kind of like this is how it is right now.
Yeah. That actually makes me feel like so connected to you, even though we just met, because
Mhm.
it's so relatable. I have some things going on in my life that have nothing to do with athletics, sports, or performance at all, but it has to do with setbacks and it has to do
Mhm.
with being kind of helpless. And of course, wanting success and wanting the great outcome, but knowing that it may not happen and that there's, going to be a lot of emotional pain if there is a bad outcome. And I think our emotions, especially those painful, fearful emotions, the woundedness, the hurt, it's also where we're most, human, and we can like relate to and connect with each other and realize like
Yeah.
we're all living out our own movie and we all have
Yeah.
hopes and dreams and setbacks and we're kind of in this together even though our pathways may look very different on the surface.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's very cool. And I'm
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, and thank you for being, brave and courageous to share what's going on. And it's interesting, the confidence that you're desiring, which makes a lot of sense. It seems that in other ways, I imagine you come across as somebody that is, quite confident. You seem to have a good sense of like who you are, what you want, where you're going, and you can articulate that pretty well.
Oh, well, thanks. It's taken me a while to get here. It's taken me a while to figure myself out and kind of peel the layers back and do some good work to get to a point where I can say, yeah, this is me. I'm good with it. I know for a long time, career wise, I wasn't sure what my direction was. But then once things started feeling and kind of falling into place for me, then it just was like, oh yeah, this is landing. This is it. So yeah, it's been some time and some work and so it's probably still will always be a work in progress.
Talking about the yoga teachings and kind of, reflective of some of the Buddhist thoughts, it
Mm,
reminds me of the story of the farmer and the horse. Have you heard this one?
yeah. Maybe I'm not quite sure.
Something about a farmer who has a horse and the horse runs away and all of the village people run up to the farmer and say, "Oh, that's so sad. That's so tragic. Your horse ran away. Life sucks." And the farmer's like, "Maybe." Then the
Maybe,
next
yeah.
day, his horse comes back with 2 wild stallions, and now he has 3 horses, and the townspeople come and say, "Hey, you're so lucky, this is amazing. Now you've got, 3 horses, life is great." And the farmer says, "Maybe." Then the next day, his son is riding one of the stallions, falls off and breaks his leg. The townspeople come up and say, "Oh, that's so tragic. Now your son's injured and life is going to be horrible." The farmer says, "Maybe." And then a week later, there's a war that erupts in the land, and all of the young men of the village are sent off to die in the war, except for his son because his son had this broken leg.
Right.
And so, just this idea of even the things that we may aspire to, the things that we want, the things that we think are going to be good, maybe they will be fulfilling, maybe not, but through whatever turns of events, we may end up having different opportunities come up, and it's another way to kind of that story in particular helps me with that idea of the non-attachment, not
Yeah.
being so attached to outcomes and just
Mhm.
trying to be open-minded and enjoy, like, something about going through the surgery and your healing, may open doors that you never imagined before.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I may be, attached to a story that I'm telling myself that this is a really awful, tragic, bad thing, but then also there might be some really cool, wonderful things that come out of it too. I don't know.
Right.
Just keeping an open mind to what could happen. Yeah.
Yeah. I find it helpful to whatever bad outcome we might be imagining, worst case scenario, because usually it's like this black box, like, oh my gosh, if I'm injured, if I can't compete anymore, my life is over. I don't even want to go there. So we don't even think about it. But I find that if we take that extra step and we spend some time imagining, okay, what is life going to be like in that case? And spend some time meditating, like really imagining what your life is going to be like and who you are, what your relationships are like, what you're going to do, then it's it really takes away this end of the world kind of a feeling and helps us to kind of make peace with, okay, life will go on, things may not be so bad. And this sort of emotiophobia or fear of these painful emotions doesn't have such a stranglehold.
Yeah. It doesn't sting quite as bad and it's not as big of a catastrophe. And when I've had injuries in the past, there there's a saying I like to use with myself is do what you can with what you've got. And like I've had some knee injuries where I'm healing my knee, but I can go in and I can do other things that I'm still making progress to where I want to go. But yeah, it's kind of that if we pause and think, well, really, is it going to be that big of a catastrophe or what else could it be like? How do I know for sure? Like, and being curious and exploring and yeah,
I've always told myself if I get paralyzed from the waist down, the very next day, wheelchair basketball league, 100%. I'm gonna be the best wheelchair slam dunking guy in the world. Yeah.
nice.
How are you feeling now? Any emotions? Was any of this any insights or epiphanies you've had as we've kind of been trying to tune into the wisdom of your own emotions today?
Yeah, I think pausing to remember kind of what we just talked about, pausing and thinking about, well, if the surgery doesn't go well and I'm not able to compete again or really do the sport in the way I want to, well, what else can I do with that? Can I get more into coaching or what, maybe it's not as bad as I'm thinking it could be. There could be other potential opportunities there and other great things. And so that was a really helpful reminder that, oh yeah, maybe I don't have to be as afraid of this as of as afraid of the potential of not competing again.
Yeah. I try to remind myself with topics like this, by all means, I'm talking to myself, do your best, try to win it all,
Mm.
go for it, be as successful as possible and give it your all. And if it works out, great, awesome. If it doesn't, you tried your hardest and just, don't be invested
Yeah.
in the outcome. Just know that you really went for it. And I think you're right. We have to kind of remind ourselves and we have to talk to each other because it's easy to slip into those ruts where we're just kind of like, we almost get paralyzed by trying to control the future, control the emotions. I think this fear of painful emotions can oftentimes paralyze us because we want so badly to avoid a bad outcome and we think it would be the end of the world. Like, we don't really think it, but irrationally it's kind of like we act like we do, so we can
Mhm.
kind of get ourselves stuck. So it's good to kind of come up for a breath of fresh air, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It really is. Yeah.
Anything else that you wanted to mention? Any other emotions coming up for you or any other thoughts for today?
No, I don't think so. I am. I'm thinking that I forgot to try and slip in any sort of Kung Fu Panda reference.
Oh, what was the one
Coach Nick will
Nick
be
said today?
disappointed.
Coach Nick will be so disappointed.
He'll be so disappointed in me. Legend tells of a legendary warrior whose Kung Fu, Kung Fu skills were made of legend or something. Yeah. There we
There's
go.
one
There it was.
there's one he said today that had something to do with like whatever you do, be awesome, something like that. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. I kind of, yes. Yep.
Well, we tried, Nick. We did our best.
We tried. We tried. Yep.
But now I love this because I never know where it's gonna go, and I learned a lot about yoga. It's more than just the fun
Yeah.
movements today, and yeah, a lot of really cool insight about sports psychology. So, yeah, thanks so much for being on, and I look forward to
Oh,
talking
yeah.
with you again.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. It was great fun.
And you said on Instagram it's Coach Kerry D?
Yes, at Coach Kerry D, KERRYD.
Awesome. Cool, thank you.
All right, thanks.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. This is Dr. Alex Wills with Give a F Actually. Make sure to check us out on Apple Podcasts or anywhere you get your podcasts.
Thanks for watching. Make sure to check out the merch store. RadicalEmotionalAcceptance.com. Bye.
Bye.